Each Championship club's best player so far this season, in my opinion. Let's go. Huddersfield Town, I'm going to go for Sorba Thomas. It's slim pickings when it comes to Huddersfield so far this season, and while Thomas can be massively frustrating, he has been one of their few players who has offered up a little bit of quality in terms of his creative numbers so far this season. 6 assists he's managed to produce in what has been a pretty terrible Huddersfield squad up until this point. I get the frustration that comes along with him. He tends to give the ball away quite a lot. His ball retention stats have really been quite poor this season, with just a 62% pass completion rate, but with that risk you also get a bit of a reward, and his set piece deliveries do tend to be on the money. West Brom, I'm going to go for Jade Wallace. Once again, fairly slim pickings when it comes to West Brom, given how inconsistent they've been so far this season, but Wallace has been one of the few players to have come up with several moments of quality throughout this year for West Brom so far. 3 goals, 3 assists, underlying numbers also fairly decent, 2.3 shots per game and 1.9 key passes as well. It does feel as if West Brom can sort out the spine of that team, someone like Wallace will flourish even more so. With Coventry, I'm going to go for Cal McFadden. I think that their defensive solidity has somewhat gone under the radar recently, but 6 clean sheets from their last 7 matches, only 1 goal conceded in that time, and I think that McFadden has been central to that, still going strong at the age of 35. And it's been quite the dramatic turnaround in terms of Cov's defensive record. Panzo coming in, I think, has also had an impact on that as well, but from the start of the season when they were shipping goals for fun to where they are now, yeah, big improvement. For Middlesbrough, I'm going to go for Ryan Giles. I think not great in terms of options for Borough so far, given how poor they've been up until this point, but his creative numbers do rank amongst the best in the Championship, and I think there's been a case for Giles at times being a little bit mismanaged by Borough, in terms of at times he's been a little bit too deep for my liking. I think the further up the pitch he is, the more influential he can be. Got an expected assists of 4.1 so far this season, which is the 5th highest in the Championship. When it comes to Cardiff, I think I'm going to go for Ryan Wintle, their only outfield player to have started in each of their Championship matches so far this season, and generally someone who you can bank on to be their most consistent performer. I think that loan move out to Blackpool the other season did him the world of good in terms of his development, and right now I'd probably put him down as their best performer. Wigan Athletic, I'm going to go for Jack Whatmore. He had to go off injured during the first game week of the season when I saw him in the flesh against North End, but from that point onwards I think he's probably been Wigan's most consistent performer this season, and considering that this is his first season actually playing at this level, I think he's been really composed considering all those circumstances, and obviously Wigan, a newly promoted club, establishing themselves at this level again. For Blackpool, I think I'm going to have to go for Jerry Yates, given he's the Championship's joint top scorer as things stand, and I've always been a little bit conflicted with Jerry Yates, but to be fair to him, he always seems to pop up with a goal or a moment in a big match, and that's certainly been applicable to this season so far. A goal against Burnley, a brace against North End, brace against Watford, brace against Sheffield United. He just pops up at that far post when it matters most, and there have been some top goals scored from him so far this season, that goal against Watford in particular. Patino, another shout for Blackpool in terms of his overall game, but the numbers certainly suggest it's been Yates for Blackpool. Stoke City, I'm going to go for Lewis Baker, started in all 16 of their Championship matches so far this season, wears the armband for them now as well, and usually delivers the goods for them as well. 8 goal contributions for the midfielder so far this season, with 4 goals as well as 4 assists. Really impressed with his role in that side when Stoke came to Deepdale and took all 3 points from us, and just generally always someone who can get you out of your seat, particularly with a long shot. Hull City, I'm going to go for Regan Slater. I think in terms of their most consistent performer throughout the season so far, I'd probably throw him in as that. Don't get me wrong, Hull have had great individual performances so far this season, from some of their attackers and things like that, but those performances I think have been a bit scattered throughout the season so far, whereas Slater is someone who I think you can more reliably bank on week in, week out to turn up with a solid performance. Birmingham, I'm going to go for John Ruddy. He's prevented more goals than any other Championship goalkeeper so far this season, with 4.9 goals prevented up until this point, and I've got to admit, at the time I wasn't completely sold on this signing, just because Ruddy's been out of the firing line for quite some time now, been a backup goalkeeper, and you always wonder, a goalkeeper when they are getting towards the advanced stages of their career, how they sort of fare when they go from being that number 2 back into the firing line as the number 1. well, Ruddy has added a wealth of experience to that Birmingham backline, and he's been excellent, but there were a few other performers from that Birmingham squad who I was considering, but he especially has really impressed me. Sunderland, I'm going to go with Ross Stewart. I know he's missed over half of their matches so far this season, but the guy's got 8 goal contributions in 7 matches this season and was absolutely prolific during that first stint of the season for Sunderland, and you can see since his absence just how much they've actually lacked his impetus in the final third. A few other players who I was considering picking out, Jack Clark, 9 goal contributions so far this season. Elise, I think, has been good in that back line as well, but Stewart has just been that game definer in those matches that he was fit for. Bristol City, I'm going to go for Neki Walsh. I quite like the comeback story of this one, given that he was sort of the forgotten man at Ashton Gate last year. Given how prolific that forward 3 was for Bristol City, the vast majority of Wells' appearances last season did come from the bench, and he couldn't really go ahead and fight for his place in that starting 11. Only scored 3 goals for them last season. Well, so far this season, he's more than doubled his entire output from last time, already scored 7 goals and got 2 assists to go along with that as well, and as things stand, he's averaging a goal contribution every 114 minutes in the Championship, which is seriously impressive. For Rotherham United, I'm going to go for goalkeeper Victor Johansson. He's been the busiest goalkeeper in the Championship up until this point. He's made more saves than any other goalkeeper, had more shots on target against him, and also boasts the 2nd best save percentage in the league as well. 60 saves he's made so far this season in the Championship, which is way out in front of anyone else. The amount of times where Rotherham have sat in, looked to be resolute defensively, but they've relied on their goalkeeper having the top performance, he's won them plenty of points already this season. Preston North End, I'm going to go for Liam Lindsay. I have to admit, I thought Lindsay was done at North End, given how last season had gone for him. Some really rash tackles and red cards towards the back end of last season, and some dodgy performances along with that, but he's made that central centre-half position his own this season. He's completely displaced Patrick Bauer in the side, and up until this point our defence has been our strong suit, and for me I think Lindsay has been the best performing of those 3 centre halves. At times I think he's covered for Story when he's been a little bit exposed, and if either Hughes or Cunningham pushes up on that left hand side as well, Lindsay's always been that guy to go ahead and cover the gaps. So yeah, in terms of aerial duels won, tackles, defensive duels, Lindsay comes out on top for North End here. Watford, I'm going to go for João Pedro. Don't get me wrong, there are other players in this Watford side who have better numbers. Sarr's got more goals and assists and that sort of stuff, but on the eye test especially, João Pedro, when he's on it, is just absolutely unplayable and arguably the best player that we've got in the Championship at the moment. 3 goals, 2 assists in 10 starts for Watford, 2 key passes per game, 2.8 dribbles per game. The guy is just absolute silk, and at only 21 years old as well. Yeah, this could be a fantastic season if Bilic fully manages to utilise him for the rest of the year. Luton Town, I'm going to go for Carlton Morris, their most prolific man in front of goal so far this season. There have been quite a few performances from that Luton squad that I have been impressed with, but I just think that Morris has given them that extra dynamic in the final third. At times last season, maybe a little bit too over-reliant on the goals of Adebayo, but that's not been the case for them this season. Carlton Morris in 14 starts and 2 appearances off the bench, 7 goals, 3 assists, and some great goals in that collection as well. Reading, Tom Ince. There were quite a few names that I was considering for this one, but overall I've probably been most impressed with Ince in a Reading shirt so far this season, and I think we forget just how good Ince once was, given how sort of average I suppose that spell was with Stoke City. There was a time, in his Derby and Blackpool days where Ince was ranking amongst the best players in the Championship, and I'm not saying that he's got back to that level, but he's certainly been back on the right trajectory. 6 goal contributions so far this season, 3 goals, 3 assists, has been that sort of player to come up with those moments of magic for Reading, and I mean that was going to be apparent for him, especially playing in that sort of number 10 role with John Swift leaving in the summer. Norwich City, going to have to go for Josh Sargent. It's been quite the resurgence in terms of his form this season, given how, I suppose, out of his depth he was looking at times in the Premier League for Norwich last time around. When you play this guy down the middle as a number 9, he scores goals. 8 goals, 2 assists so far this season. He has been experimented with, he's been chucked into a few different positions this season, sort of into more creative roles out wide and stuff, but I think his best position is down the middle, where he can be most influential in front of goal. And when he has been presented with those opportunities this season, more often than not, he has hit the back of the net. Millwall, I'm going to go for Zian Fleming. It took him a little bit of time to settle in. I think he had that knock at the start of the season to go ahead and shake off as well, but now he is fully established within this Millwall side. He does have it in him to come up with those moments of quality, and I mean, I for one am really looking forward to seeing Millwall come into Deepdale in a few weeks, just so I can see him in the flesh, on the eye, what he's like in person. But yeah, impressive so far this season, given the matches that he's started. 10 starts, 5 goals for Millwall, and I think the best is still yet to come. Sheffield United, I'm going to have to go for Ollie Norwood. Given some of the injuries they've had to other positions and other players that I was considering, in terms of a consistent performer who's got a shout to have been one of the best players in the Championship this season, for me, Ollie Norwood. And the guy just absolutely uses class, doesn't he? And just seems to be getting better into his older years. In terms of switching the play, being that composed midfielder who can drag a team. 2 goals, 3 assists for himself so far this season, but a player like Norwood shouldn't be defined by that. When you watch Sheffield United play, he keeps them ticking along. Great range of passes, and yeah, he's been excellent so far this season. Swansea City, I'm going to go for Matt Grimes. Really classy operator on the ball, another player quite similar to Norwood in that mould, but recently has been adding some more goal contributions to his game as well, in terms of that threaded through ball that he's capable of. Absolutely brilliant stuff. 5 assists for him so far this season, but once again, not really a player who's defined by those sorts of stats in terms of keeping Swansea ticking along, moving in midfield. Yeah, really classy operator, Matt Grimes, and you can see why so many other clubs have been linked with him in previous transfer windows. Burnley, I'm going to have to go for Josh Brownhill. There were quite a few others that I was considering. Burnley have had a lot of high performers so far this season, but Brownhill in particular, once again, another player who has a claim to be the best midfielder in the Championship as things stand. Been played in that slightly more advanced role, which I think has suited his game a little bit more, certainly in terms of his end product. 9 goal contributions already for the 26-year-old so far this season. In several big moments for Burnley so far this season, he's popped up with that little bit of quality, but yeah, there have been quite a few Burnley players that I have liked the look of. Blackburn Rovers, going to keep it obvious, but I'm going to go for Ben Brereton. 8 goals, 1 assist in 17 appearances this season for Rovers. He's been one of the highest XG over performers up until this point as well. And fair play for Blackburn for going ahead and sticking to their guns when it came to him. Obviously, they could have been tempted to go ahead and sell him in the summer for probably below his value given his contract situation. They've decided to go ahead and keep him at the club, and I think they're reaping the rewards of that at the moment. Sat in the top 2 of the Championship, and he's been excellent. Some clinical finishes this season. Finishing it off with QPR, I'm going to have to go with Chris Willock. Listen, I know the guy's been out injured recently, but when he was fit and in that starting 11, oh my god, was he delivering the goods for Queen's Park Rangers. Last season he was absolutely brilliant, 7 goals, 11 assists. I think he might have even taken it up a notch this season, if that was even possible from how good he was last time around. But 6 goals in just 9 starts for Willock. Can't wait to see him back in that QPR side, because yeah, with him on the pitch and Chair as well, I mean, they've got every chance of who knows what this season. But guys, there we have it. There for me was every Championship club's best performing player so far this season. Would like to get your guys' verdict on this one in the comments down below as well. Do you agree with my selections for your team? Let me know who else has been a high performer from your club. Apart from that, that will wrap it up for today's video, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.